It's 26 minutes after 6. Good to have you with us here on the South African Morning. I'm Gareth Edwards, out at an undisclosed location in the Rudaput Honeydew area, standing on a construction site. I'm sure in weeks and months to come, where I'm standing right now is going to be a private apartment block. What we're talking about this morning is the construction mafia. Cindy Mabe back in Hyde Park teed this up very nicely for me earlier, saying that this is not at all like what you see in the movies. This is real life. The construction mafia has been a problem for a number of years, very much coming into focus back in 2019, just before the COVID-19 pandemic had hit. 3 billion rand are some of the reports coming out that has been lost to a construction mafia and construction mafias around the country. Now, in case you're wondering what in the world is Gareth going on about this morning, here's what a construction mafia is. Essentially, it is a group of people, often under the guise of a business forum. They are trying to get involved in government tenders, government building tenders, and also private projects for construction. They don't get given the tender. Then, as supposedly in interests of the local community and as a business forum, they then try and approach the construction companies and the owners of construction sites. They want in on the work. They want not just workers on the construction sites, but they also start demanding, when they don't get their way, up to 30% of the value of the contract for that particular project. And this can run into millions, hundreds of millions, on occasion even billions. So they basically extort money. They intimidate the construction companies, often disrupting the process and the workers on the construction sites until they get their way. Very quickly, it's often seen as a big issue down in KZN. Sihle Zikalala over the weekend saying that there are some 680 investigations and over 700 arrests down in the Western Cape. The Cape Town Mayor, that's Jordan Hill-Lewis, saying that they're also looking into the situation, even wanting to hire private security for construction companies in the government sector to allow the work to continue as well. What's the situation as far as Gauteng is concerned? Arguably the economic capital of the country. Let's bring into the conversation Alan Fuchs, the DA Gauteng Shadow MEC for infrastructure, making time for me this morning. Mr. Fuchs, good morning to you. So have I surmised this fairly well? That's a construction mafia. They're bullying, they're intimidating, they're extorting construction companies. How bad is the situation in Gauteng? Good morning.
Good morning to you, Gareth. You asked me how well you've surmised the situation. Well, it's not a question of surmising. It's in fact definition. And you very accurately defined the situation in which we find ourselves. As you correctly say, Gauteng, being the financial capital of this country and the gateway to Africa, unfortunately has not been immune to this particular practice. And as you say, these are people who, in my view, are criminal extortionists. So they would demand, for example, to provide you with, if you're a developer and you're a contractor and you're running a particular project, they would demand for you to pay to them, and the number that's often used is 30% of the value of the project. And where that 30% comes from, just let me explain that background. The Preferential Procurement Framework Act, as well as the regulations, refer to a situation where any project that's over 50 million rand, 30% of the value of that project needs to go to what they call local input. Now, people misinterpret this. People think that means that a contractor running a contract would have to employ people from the local community, SMMEs who provide services such as, bricklaying and carpet laying and that sort of thing. And 30% of the value must go to people who live in that particular area where the project is taking place. But now that's really a misinterpretation of what the legislation says. Now, the result of this legislation has been incredible competition amongst small SMMEs in areas where, when a project arises, they then compete with each other to get that particular work. What has made the situation totally untenable is that these groupings called business forums then come in, and they are well resourced, They are well armed. And when they come into a site, they put their automatic weapons on the table and say, we'd now like to talk to you, Mr. Contractor. We would like you please to give us X% of the proceeds of this project. We will provide you with SMMEs. These are people who work for us, and we will then provide you with, with their services. And over and above that, if you pay us an additional amount, we will in fact protect you, protection fee. We'll make sure that nobody else comes in and disturbs you. Now, in the event that you decline this absolute extortion and criminal activity, then your life is at risk. There's no question about that. There have been a number of assaults. There have been people who've been killed as a result of this. And the unfortunate situation is that it's across the whole country. We've had numerous projects that have been stopped. So, the opportunity cost in terms of service delivery is lost. The projects take a lot longer to complete, if they are ever completed at all, as a result. And unfortunately, we're on a downward spiral. Infrastructure and construction is meant to help us to buoy and support the economy. But unfortunately, in this particular instance, it's costing us. And the real shame is that government has abdicated its responsibility, its obligation to protect its citizens. And all we've heard from politicians is a lot of...
I want to ask you about that, Alan. Forgive me for jumping in. I want to ask you about that as well, because you've surmised very nicely for us. What we're dealing with here is extortion on the building blocks, if you will, of the economy of our country as well. You say government has failed in a case like this. The Cape Town Mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, over the weekend addressing this issue as well, saying that they're considering, as the Western Cape government, hiring security companies. I can't imagine what that would cost and add to the bill of construction. Down in KZN, Sihle Zikalala also talking about the situation. They're saying a number of arrests have been made. Yes, arrests aren't convictions, of course, but how does government try and get on top of this? Where do we try and put a stop to this situation from a legal, a policing, or a governance perspective?
Yes, indeed. I mean, many politicians have weighed in on this matter. The Premier of KZN. And the reason we mention KZN is because that is where these forums actually started, in the townships in KwaZulu-Natal, and it then spread across the country. So politicians present, discuss these matters. They tell us how upset they are. They assure us that the criminal justice system will step in and deal with it. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. Nothing actually happens. Now, you talk about employing security guards to deal with this. Gareth, let me assure you, we are not playing here with petty criminals. These are networks that are well-resourced, as I said, well-armed, have money to spare, and employing a few security guards is really not going to make the difference. I've been told by people in the know that the only way you will ever get to deal with this from a security point of view is to have a military-type army of people who are trained militarily who can go up against these particular thugs. Now, can I just say, it's not just
that makes me wonder, mafia. Alan, forgive me for jumping in again. There is a slight delay on our line. Just forgive me as well, Alan, and viewers. There is a delay between Alan and myself because I'm on location, so forgive me if I talk over you as well. National Key Points Act. Alan, just in closing, last question to you. What about the legal framework of this as well? The National Key Points Act, we saw this with Eskom. We've seen this with other points of national interest. Could that be applied to the construction sector? Is that even a possibility?
Look, at the end of the day, Gareth, what is required is for people to be innovative, to think of solutions that are going to help us get out of this hole we're in. And so as far as national key points are concerned, we have called, when I say we, I'm talking about the Democratic Alliance, we've called for national key points, for example, to be exempt, from load shedding. And as far as I'm concerned, national key points and other endeavors are required to be discussed, and we've got to go back to the drawing board. This legislation, which is the genesis of the construction mafia, is something we need to look at. we understand we want to support local economies. But if it was my call, I would go back to the drawing board. I'd re-look at that legislation. I'd re-look at how we empower local SMMEs, because the way we have done it now has led to the situation where, unfortunately, this is having a huge negative impact on our economy and the future of our country.
Yeah, it certainly is. The economy, also jobs in our country as well, growth from the economic sector, growth from the construction sector as well, often one of the biggest employing sectors in the country as well. Alan Fuchs is the DA Gauteng Shadow MEC for Infrastructure here in Gauteng, and I'm sure many people would agree. Just go back to the drawing board. You need to rethink this. What we cannot have is patchwork solutions. Throw in some security guards. Yes, right now it's a case of trying to find some kind of solution. Security guards, possibly. More arrests, possibly. Getting into the National Key Points Act as well, like we saw with Eskom during the load shedding. Getting the army out, as Mr. Fuchs suggests, could be a way to go. There's a litany of problems, and I'm afraid there's even more a litany of solutions. The question is, someone has to decide what it is we're going to do. Cindy Mabi, as I come back to you in Hyde Park, getting a political view on this. And we're going to continue to do that. What is our focus on the construction mafia throughout today? It's been an issue for years. I'm standing at an undisclosed site out in Roodepoort this morning as well. As you would imagine, we don't want to be exposing this particular construction site nor the company that is involved here. Cindy, you can imagine just how concerned everyone is in the construction sector, considering what it is that we are talking about this